Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hang Out with Coach Kerry. If you are a solo entrepreneur or service provider, and you've been wondering, what's the key that's holding you back from the success that you want? You just don't know what it is. You're not getting the results. You're doing everything that you think you should be doing, and yet there still seems to be something stopping you. Well, today's episode might be the key to unlocking your success. And you've got to stay to the very end of this because we're going to give you some ways in which you can find out more about how to actually break through this. So today I'm absolutely thrilled on my Hangout with Coach Kerry show to be interviewing a good friend and colleague of mine. She is an author, best-selling author. She is an international speaker, and she's a retreat workshop facilitator for women who want to really break through all those things that are holding them back. So welcome, Jo Dibblee, to my Hangout with Coach Kerry show today.
Oh, Kerry, I'm so excited to be here because often, as you said, there's that one thing that gets us stuck, and we end up, wondering, what if we just did this, but maybe this isn't quite the thing. We're going to talk about some of the cool things or some of the things that are so simple to change immediately, and you can start seeing a change right away and implement them into your life and into your business, because after all, we are one person.
Absolutely, absolutely we are. And if we've got stuff going on in our personal life or things that are holding us back, it's going to reflect into our business as well. And as you know, Jo, I'm a seasoned business strategist and business coach, and I've been working with a lot of the audience people, just like the audience today, over the last 17 years that I've been in business, and I see it over and over and over again. They know the mechanics of the business, but it's just there's that other piece. It's that personal piece that's there that needs to be unlocked. So today, that's the purpose of this episode, which is why I'm so excited about having you on this episode. So, Jo, let's get right into it. Jo, I know you've got your book, Frock Off. It's there, and you're probably going to talk about that. But for this episode today, tell us a little bit about your background that really brought you to this journey that now you're on.
Thanks, Kerry. The thing is that's so interesting is if you had told me, say, 5, even maybe 2.5 years ago that I would be where I am right now, I would have been blown away and thought, well, that sounds lovely, but really? And as a strategist how this happens, because it's sometimes that tweaking that one thing, and in my case, it was personal. As someone who has had to overcome tremendous odds, still not really realizing that is actually an asset to be, when you're in business, every time you overcome something, the next time that thing comes around, whatever that thing is. I remember I was doing an event. I'm just going to sidebar for a second, if it's okay, just to give an example here. I was doing an event and our microphone system died. We had roughly about 150 people in the room, and the speaker that was about to come up is a comedian, and she absolutely needs a microphone. Now, if that had happened when I first started in my business, event planning has all these moving parts all the time, I would have been panicked big time. But if I had panicked, I would have set the speaker off, meaning I would have taken her off her game, and her job was to deliver at her highest level with all things being equal. That being said, we managed that, we got through that, and that sounds like a little thing. But when you've got, 150 people, and you've got this, and you've got this, and you've got this, those things can derail us. So anyway, back to your original question, for myself, because of the tremendous personal obstacles that I had to overcome, I had a perception that if people knew who I was, really knew who I was, that I would be judged, that they would not value who I was, and that they would listen to me. And, it's that old saying as an entrepreneur, which because you work with people, Kerry, how often we get that imposter syndrome. It doesn't even really matter where we come from. Who am I to say that I can help someone? Well, you know who you are. You're a rock star. You know more in your area than anyone else, but yet we devalue or dilute our own offerings by that fear.
Yeah, and that's why today's topic is your self-perception costing you big time? Because we know that it's that conversation that goes on in our head. It stops us from making those extra calls. It actually has us it's so sneaky too, because it can show up as logic, it can show up as rationale, it can show up as, well, of course, that is what it is, and what happens is we end up collecting evidence, often to prove it right. So this is just such a great topic, Jo, because I know that everybody who's listening to this right now has some component of this imposter piece, this self-perception stuff that's going on. So Jo, what was it that actually brought you to the point when you said, okay, I need to figure out how to tackle this? You'd identify that that's what was going on, and then, well, what was your first step?
Well, you start to hear, I love how you said that the evidence will keep presenting itself, but you know what else? It does on that side in terms of reaffirming your fear, but it also presents itself on the other side where it's, something's brought into your path. So in my case, I would meet women who were so talented, rock star talented. And they were undermining who they were and what their offering was, because what they would do is they would say, well, I'm struggling and there's no way for me to get past this. Well, you know what? There is a way for you to get past it. You're going to have to bear with me. I'm having a little technical difficulty here. There is a way to get past things, though, because every single time someone came to my life and said, I'm not good enough, it was like a mirror image of myself. And here I was, telling them how amazing they were and how talented they were and that their gifts need to be shared, and yet inside I was having the same thing. So I think if we're going to look, just as a sidebar, if we're going to look for evidence, we might want to look on both sides of the fence, not just to reaffirm our fear, but how about reaffirm that there's another side to this, or at least be aware that when that presents itself, that's an opportunity for growth. And I saw that over and over again. These like I said, amazingly talented people, and I started to realize I had the secret sauce right inside me. I had the keys. I just had to be willing to step into them.
Yeah, that self-perception thing is so tricky, isn't it? Because it presents itself as being so. Of course, it is what it is. It actually appears to be the truth. Mm-hmm. And we know that that it's not the truth. But the fact of the matter is that it presents, as you said, it collects that evidence. So, is one of the first keys then is being aware that all of our beliefs and notions we have need to be taken a look at. We need to actually shine the light on those, and so that when we do that, then we can say, okay, is that one serving me, or is it not serving me? And again, I've been collecting evidence this way, but what could be the flip side? Is that one of the first processes or steps that you would recommend?
Absolutely. I think, when you start to see something over and over again, there's a reason you're seeing it, whatever that is, okay? So whether it's in our business, if we're struggling, for example, if we're struggling with finances, this goes into that whole perception thing. If you're struggling with finances or you're afraid to spend money in your business, there's a reason that's not to do with money that this is coming up, okay? So here's a good example. I would work with people, again, that were super talented, but they would earn a lot of money and they would spend a lot of money, not necessarily on the growth for their business. So money was flowing like the river, but never being invested where it could help them. And their perception was, who am I? Again, it's going to boil down to the core of who we are. If you've been taught that having money has some negative connotations around it, you're probably going to struggle with how to use that money wisely and or invest it into your business, because if you invested your business, now you might grow more. Oh my gosh, now you're even worse than you were before, if this is making sense. The reality is that we have to let go of or identify, like you said, once we get it, we have to examine why. I have a self-evaluation I use every day, whether it's around if I'm feeling a certain way, and it's a simple thing. Why am I feeling this way right now? What is going on? What's triggering this? Because when we know better, it's cliche, but it's Maya Angelou. She was pretty rock star. I mean, that woman came from out of nowhere to do great things. She's a legacy I'd like to live in terms of making my impact. But when you know better, you do better. It's totally true. You have to be aware and identify before you can do anything else.
Absolutely. In the coaching world, one of the premises that we operate on is that you can only change what you acknowledge. And so you can only do that. And so that's a perfect example. Is whenever we're actually, I guess I'm just going to ask you this question. So whenever we're feeling resistance to something, or we're struggling with something, or a fear that shows up, what I'm hearing you say is our very first step is to stop and observe that and ask, how is that serving me? Is that actually is that perception actually getting the results that I want, or is it holding me back from taking this step? And if it is, by shining a light on it, then we can actually choose to look at it a different way, or say, I mean, I see it as basic as talking about the whole money concept, is that quite often I will see people and they have this sort of, I'm going to call it, poverty mentality, and yet they have incredible talent, and they're gifted, and their business idea is great, but have this poverty mentality. So when it comes to spending money that would actually move them forward, they justify it by some other idea over here that actually makes sense to them if you think of it from just a logical standpoint. But when we actually look at the evidence, it isn't true, and it's actually holding them back. So the first step then, of course, is becoming aware of what your thoughts and your perceptions are. That's the first piece I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely. And that whole poverty mentality is such a detriment to the business, and it overflows into other things. But at the crux of it, why are we feeling that? Like, why are we justifying this? It's simple. It's another simple example of that, with people that know they need to get out and network to grow their business, but they're not willing, or they refuse to spend the money to go out. When the truth be told, people do business with who they know. Even if we use the old saying, know, like, and trust. Well, how will they know you if you're hiding in your office or not doing those other things? So it's knowing what's at your core, and examining what's at your core, because when you get that, you're unstoppable. You just need to get that first.
Yeah, absolutely. Figure out what that piece is. And it shows up in things like, well, I'm not very good at networking, or I'm shy, or I'm a homebody, or when it comes to networking events, or when it comes to creating things, I have nothing to say, or who would listen to me. Those type of things, and those are the negative comments. I always find it interesting is when I hear people justify certain actions based on some faulty logic, because they've again gathered that evidence to prove a particular notion tucked away inside them. In the coaching world, we actually call that little person the gremlin. Because the gremlin can show up in all different forms. I often will have clients imagine that gremlin have a particular look, so maybe a little devil with the horns. But it could be. In fact, I will even recommend that sometimes they get if they find a little, a stuffy that's not very handsome or something, and then when they catch themselves in that thinking process, that they can pick this up and throw it against the wall or something, just to kind of break that pattern that's there. So, Jo, tell me a little bit more about your personal story then, and how you became aware that your self-perception was holding you back, even though you were out there being an encourager of other women and telling them exactly what they needed to do. Did you have this aha moment when you went, okay, I need to do this myself, or was there something that had you? Because often we go along and we're a little bit asleep, realizing that this isn't me, this is everybody else, when this kind of aha moment happens. So was there that for you, or what was the catalyst?
A couple of different things. That whole imposter syndrome, in terms of saying, who am I? But as I write about in the story, I took on other people's shame, guilt, and fear. I took on my parents' shame, guilt, and fear. I took on what I perceive society would say that I should be. A simple example of that is initially I believed that if you didn't have, for example, a university degree, which is not as traumatic as some of the other things I'll share in a second, but if I didn't have a university degree, I only had 2 diplomas, therefore I wasn't as smart. Now, just to put this in perspective, while in college doing my 2 diplomas, only 2 diplomas, my GPA was 3.59, which is an A-, like high A- GPA. Yet, in my mind, because I didn't go on to Simon Fraser University because I was a single parent and, I couldn't take 2 more years and blah, 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 all the justification I had was only to do with the fact that I didn't think I was smart enough to go to university, not the 2 years. It had nothing to do with the 2 years. And it took me a long time to own that. Okay, so that's a simple one. Now, take that. Add to that, I had personal perceptions because of my parents and what they had done as a career before I even arrived into the world. So I want to clear that. Before I arrived in the world, I wasn't born, I wasn't even thought of. My parents were in, as the world would say, the oldest profession, which means my father, unfortunately, had got my mom into prostitution, and therefore I was conceived in the oldest profession. Now, I joke about that and say, well, of course I'm an entrepreneur. I was conceived as an entrepreneurial act. Why wouldn't I be an entrepreneur? I'm not making fun of my parents. I'm not making light of the fact of what happened. I feel tremendous sadness for my mother when it comes to this. However, the best way for me to embrace and change was to look at it as a whole picture and go, what is the thing here? What is the big thing here? The big thing was I had nothing to do with that decision. I was a byproduct of that decision. It wasn't my shame or guilt to carry around. And here's a kicker. Even if it was, when would I let it go? When was the time? Because we've all made some tremendous mistakes or had some things in our life and we go, oh, what if people knew? Like, what if they knew I did this when I was 20, hypothetically? You know, so I was 20 quite a while ago. And so the point is, if you're going to live to be X, so my checkout date for me is 106. Doesn't matter, that's my date, okay? I don't want to spend, so let's assume I did something when I was 20. I don't want to spend X amount of years, what is that, 70 some odd years, living that nightmare that I was not good enough. And in this case, it wasn't even mine to feel bad about. It wasn't mine to own, but that's the other thing we do. We take on perception. But in short to that, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired of hiding, sick and tired of playing small, sick and tired of, you know, I loved helping other people. That was a no-brainer. But I felt like a fraud just by helping them now. So the teacher teaches what she needs to learn. Oh, yeah, I was living that story. I was so, the word is, I was so entrenched in my own perceptions of what was good enough, what wasn't good enough, that even though I was being told, and this evidence piece you talk about, so critical here. You've known me a while, Kerry. You've seen me achieve things. And here I was being told I was worthy, I was doing a great job. I mean, even on international levels, I had some opportunities present. And, you know, I had things that, like, things were coming into me almost like if you think of a, you know, kind of a windstorm, a fan, for example, blowing on all this goodness, and yet still I had been discounting. But the day came when I had been talking to someone and I had seen a presenter, and this is why I think it's so important we get out of our office, go to different things, surround yourself, because you don't know, you might hear it 50 times, and then that one time, it's going to click for you. You're going to go, oh my gosh, she's right, or he's right. Like, I just heard something that's going to be the catalyst for my success. And the day came, I listened to someone who said to me, and it wasn't to me specifically, I'm sitting in the audience, okay, I'm doing one of my events, and she says, you have a responsibility while here to change the world. It doesn't mean the global world. It could be change yourself, change your gifts, change your relationships, change your community, whatever. And you don't get to hide forever. And when she said it, and even as I say it to you now, I get goosebumps. It was the catalyst for change. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I decided it was time to tell my story. And that changed everything.
You know, I love that word that she used, responsibility, because I believe that we all are put on this earth with gifts and talents, that it's our responsibility to actually use those God-given talents that we have to share with the world. And if we're playing small, if we're hiding behind our frocks, and we're going to introduce that word in a moment or find out more about that, but if we're putting on those frocks, those roles, those things, and hiding behind that, we're actually not doing what we're meant to do in the world. And so it's about, you know, really stepping out and being being who you're all that you're meant to be. And clearly, Jo, you've done that. So tell me this whole notion of frocks, and maybe explain to our audience a little bit more about what that is, because obviously that's the title of your book and the events that you do as well. So tell our audience a little bit more about frocks and why it's important to frock off.
I love that saying, obviously. A frock, if we look at just the origin of the term frock, a frock was simply, an overcoat or a dress. Think of clergy, they'll wear a frock, a judge wears a frock. So think of it as something you put over top of yourself to conceal, to not just to hide, but to cover up. Another person might call it a mask. Another person might call it a disguise. But a frock for me is anything that stops us from being who we are truly intended to be. So whether it's a self-perception, an attitude, a belief that's like way off the scales wrong, something that's just crazy, but we are stuck in it, or even things that are, they're not really serving us, but they're also not really not serving us because they're used as a reinforcement. But for myself, I had to start covering up with frocks quite at an early age. But the one I remember, or the time I remember best, is I would stand outside of the house when I was 14 before I would go in. And I don't know if you can see this, but I would actually put on a imaginary coat, and that turned to armor. I would actually fully cloak myself in this imaginary thing. I must have looked like a raving lunatic, but in my head, it was how I could protect myself, and yet didn't really think about it. It just came to me. I had been doing things to kind of hide before, and now this was a way. So I could walk into our home, which at that time was really quite traumatic. My parents were not well, and they were, trying to take their lives on a regular basis. So you never knew what you were walking into, or my dad would drink too much, and I would find him out in the yard, and it was a bad time. And this whole thing was to help keep me protected from what I might see. So, we've heard lots of things about doing visions to protect yourself. For example, a vision to fight cancer. Well, that frock was my vision, and essentially I was putting my vision on so I could walk in, and that worked potentially at that moment to keep me well and sane, if you will. In other words,
that's a perfect reaction. You think about it. As a child, you needed to protect yourself from it. So it was a tool. It was a tool used at that particular time to help you. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And so that frock became my suit of armor. And it carried on into my life. Like I remember catching myself one day in the car before going in the house, because when a relationship was really in turmoil, I remember putting it on in the car, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what is this? Where is this coming? So that that mechanism for self-protection came back like that, like just in a snap. When I needed it, was there. Great tool at the time, potentially, to keep me from suffering severe post-traumatic stress. Because if you look at studies with children that have seen what I have seen and witnessed, and then gone on to have other trauma happen, we're more destined to have post-traumatic stress disorder. I think the real reason is I had that coping mechanism. Now, that mechanism served me then, as you said, but it didn't serve me. It didn't need to serve me, or wouldn't serve me for my remaining life if I didn't find other ways to address those issues. So really, a frock is a protection mechanism. Sometimes there are fun frocks. That's that little black number you put on, you feel like hey, I still got it. The ones that don't serve you are the ones that are around perception of worth, or, trying to defend yourself. You don't need to defend yourself when you go out to a networking meeting. You're there to build strong relationships of people you can serve because you have a talent. And they're only going to know that if they get to know you. So take off the frocks before you walk in. Oftentimes when I feel nervous, I just go, yeah, not needed, and that's it.
Yeah, because again, the title of this episode is your perception, is your self-perception costing you big time? And of course, if these tools that at some point we needed, or not, because they may not have been needed, and it was just our perception that we needed them. If we continue to carry those, that will stop us and hold us back from being everything that we can be. And really, don't we want to just be, don't we want to live our life fullest, serve our customers and our clients as best we can, have a success in the life we want. I mean, that's really what it's about. So this whole self-perception, these frocks are really important to ditch. So Jo, you've got a book, of course, called Frock Off, and where can people find that book?
The book is on Amazon.com and .ca, and of course anywhere where I'm speaking live, I have books with me. I opted not to go. I have some in some smaller independent stores, but the idea behind this book is it's not. It is a great story to read of hope and inspiration. We just won #3 in the world out of 33,000 books for true crime, hope, and inspiration. Because, of course, the book is based on how I grew up and then me meeting a foster parent who subsequently assaulted me and ended up becoming one of the serial killers in British Columbia. And so I became their only murder witness. So I can tell you about those kind of frocks another time. But that book is based on hope and inspiration in spite of what's happened, because I believe we can come through anything. So I tend to offer the books when I'm speaking live, or as I said, on Amazon.ca or .com, because I think it's more than a story. It's about reclaiming your life and living what your intended purpose is. We're not here to do time. That is so lame. Yeah. That's like watching paint dry. We're here to make, and I mean, I've seen that. I've witnessed people doing time, sadly. So we need to, for ourselves and for the world, for those that know and love us or interact with us, we need to step into who we really are. Whatever that gift is, use it. That's why you were given it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Jo, I know that you have upcoming events, and people can find that at frockoff.com, and between frock and off there's a dash. So so people can find out about upcoming events that you have as well. And for the people who are listening today, please come join me on Google+, Hang Out with Coach Kerry. And I have a community there, Kerry Brown's Passport to Growth Academy, and Jo is one of my community members. So you can have an opportunity to be able to interact and engage with Jo. So come and join my community on Google+. You can also find the replay of this particular episode at HangOutWithCoachKerry.com, and it's Kerry spelled Kerry, if you want to watch it again and listen to it again. Maybe share it with other people that you might feel might need to hear a story of inspiration about how they can live the life that they're really meant to live. So, Jo, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your inspiration, your story, and more, that you can be a beacon of light for people there to know that there is hope, that they can actually shed those frocks and really live the life that they're meant to, and of course then impact the world through their business by having it be a success as well. Any last final words that you want to say to the audience?
Oh, first and foremost, Kerry, thank you for what you're doing. And, it's the conversations that generate the change. So thank you for the opportunity to share. I'm hoping, we are doing a couple large events, which you alluded to a little earlier. And we're doing an event in Vancouver, and we're doing one on Vancouver Island as well. We do them in Alberta as well. And it's called A Frockalicious Life, because a frock by itself, not so much. Frockalicious is delicious. And so you can find, as Kerry said, you can find all the information right on the website at frock-off.com. And I promise you that you will enter one way and you will leave on fire and ready to blow the doors off, whatever that is. But mostly we'll ignite your passion, your gifts, and your talents again, and give you the tools, as Kerry's been doing today, give you the tools to take that business to the next level, because you are needed and your gifts need to be shared. No more paint and no more just doing time. That's all passé. That was yesterday, someday, tomorrow, and one day. Those are yesterday's news. How about now? How about live your frockalicious life now? Because I'd love to celebrate with you. So I hope to see you there. In the meantime, Kerry, again, I thank you so much for the opportunity and the gifts that you bring by sharing your knowledge I've sat with you while you've done some strategy, even when I didn't really know what you were doing to me. You are extremely gifted, and you are the reason that people can take their business to the next level, because we're too close to see when we're in it ourselves. When we're stuck, we need someone else. So this goes to that point. I just end on this. With regard to the money, don't hold yourself back. Get yourself a coach. By the way, I work with more than one coach because it's critical. So if you've got the opportunity to work with Kerry, don't be silly. Invest in you and then watch what happens. So thanks again, Kerry.
Well, thanks, Jo. And I would love for those of you who watch this, go post some comments so we know we can interact back with you and let you know. So again, you can watch live 9 a.m. Pacific time with Hangout with Coach Kerry, and you can also watch, and again, all previous episodes at hangoutwithcoachkerry.com. Thank you, everyone, and go and live a frockalicious life. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.